If Flash is a way to process traumatic information without distress, but there is distress in the traumatic information, it's helpful to have a place for the distress to go that is external to the client's nervous system. This may sound bizarre, the idea of separating activation from distress, but that's what makes Flash effective. If the distress and the calm scene are both in awareness, Flash will not work, or it'll work at a crawl and will leave substantial debris. The container in EMDR therapy and Flash therapy have similarities, but they also have important differences. They're similar in that both are boxes that hold stuff, right? So they're very similar in that way. But how we use them is really different. In EMDR therapy, we may scoop all of the residual distress at the end of a session, scoop it up, see it go into the container, close the door, and kind of just leave it there, right here in awareness, but yet distant enough, so that it's not activating us and we're not activating it. In this version of Flash, the container is used every time we quickly check the memory. And all of the distress that comes out of that very quick check is going to be routed directly into the container. Think of this like hot potato, and how a hot potato, the moment you catch it, you may just toss it into a casserole dish. Since we'll be checking the memory in an average Flash session, 30 to 45 times, we're going to need a new empty container to come each time, and we're going to talk about why in step 5. Also, it's important to note that we're working on the memory only one microslice at a time. So we never say things like glance at the memory and container the whole memory, right? We're not containing the whole memory at all. We're only containing the right now microslice, okay? And just to give you a little bit of insight into what that looks like, we're not asking the clients to tell us what they're containing, but if they did, it would be something like this. It's the way he's looking at me. It's the feeling of a particular word in the way he says it, right? So each little bitty tiny microslice, what's coming out is not typically the whole memory and everything that came after it. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny microslice of the memory. So it's a single frame of the video that gets containered, right? If the video of the memory plays, we've played too much. If they're telling you what they're containing, they're activating too much. In Flash, the memory is purposefully pushed out of awareness because all of awareness is going to be needed for the calm scene, and all of this happens quickly. Again, think about hot potato, right? The moment it hits your hand, you're getting rid of it. The container can be anything, and you'll see in a minute. I'm going to walk through some language that will give the client. The container can be a file folder, a box, a book, a chest, ceramic pots, anything that works for the container. The client is then asked to push or send the container away, ideally hundreds of miles away, because we want to get it out of direct focus and awareness. Okay, so in step 1, we're developing this container that we're going to use over and over and over. Step 1 is an important part of the hardware of this working mechanism that's going to work throughout the client's recovery when we use Flash approaches. Step 1 is the container. It's like this part of a 2-part pump, right? The container is one central part where we're going to microactivate. We're going to pull a little bit of distress from that memory. Imagine a hose that's connecting to a particular individual memory. We're going to pull a tiny bit in. We're going to put it in this container, and the calm scene is going to process it and pump it into normal memory, that microslice into normal memory. So all we're doing in step 1 is developing our container. And we don't just want to develop it. We want to also test it. So one of the things that I like to do, and you'll see me kind of model this as we walk through it, is test it using a slip of paper or a business card. I don't like to test it with actual trauma or actual, drama going on in the client's life right now. When we first develop this container, we want to test it using something innocuous, and I'll walk you through how to do that. So here's some language that we may give the client. This is language right out of the script. And you're going to see it modeled in many of the demos, or some version of it in the demos. So this is what I may say to the client. We're going to work one memory at a time, and we'll do this by not thinking about it or feeling anything about it. We want to develop a container or a box that will hold whatever small pieces of a memory we activate, and we're going to keep it out of direct awareness. What type of container might be helpful? It can be a file box, a safe, pottery with a lid, or anything that is able to hold something for just a little while. Client tells you, good, what color is it? What's it made of? We almost want the client to spin it around in awareness. How does it close? Right? How does it latch? So we're having them just notice these qualities. Okay. Once they have a good sense of this container, how it closes, how it opens, how it closes, what the inside of it looks like, can you imagine a blank slip of paper or a business card going into this container? Can you see the container close? Can you imagine pushing that container far, far away until it's just a tiny speck in the sky? Does it feel like that container and its contents are far enough away for it to be out of your focus just for right now? Okay, good. So what we've done, we've walked the client through developing the container, one part, one aspect of the time, noticing it. We've tested it, right, with a business card. And again, I'll give you troubleshooting tips about what to do if the client is having trouble with any part of this. There are whole podcast episodes that I'm going to put in the area beneath this that will help you for your clients that struggle to visualize, or for whom these kind of tasks, imagining tasks, are way too abstract. And of course, you can always use an actual container. And we want to check client parts, right? In each of the steps, we want to check client parts. And the way I may do that is, once we've developed a container, I may say, does this container work for all parts of you? Right? Or are there parts of you that may need a different type of container or make modifications to this one? So we want to understand this process as being a parallel process, almost like we're working with a group, right? So when we're working with a system, it's okay if there are like 7 or 8 identified parts, for 5 or 6 of them to have a particular, maybe it's a ceramic container, right? But 2 of them may need a steel safe with a lock. It is okay for different parts to have different containers, and they can all use them in a parallel way. So that is the container exercise, developing it in a very overview way.